Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Welcome back, brothers and sisters, to another show, back to back, alhamdulillah. And I'd like to thank Brother Yusuf for making time to discuss this topic. And we need to continue to spread these streams to other parts of the society. We need to share the streams and pass this information on. And we're doing our part to raise awareness regarding the situation in Palestine and, of course, in Gaza and the West Bank and the suffering that the people are going through right now. We need to make a stand. And by doing this is by watching the streams, sharing them, liking them, subscribing to the channels, because we know that the media, the Western media, have been banned to enter the killing zones, as I would like to put them as, is the killing zones. So any information that these channels, YouTube channels, do with the Cover Theft and Brothers Yusuf's channel, South African Debate Initiative, and also on my Rumble account, Abu Shuaib, that we need to share these streams. So this is a sincere request and an announcement that, brothers and sisters, we need to continue to highlight the situation that brothers and sisters are going through in Palestine. And this is the way we can do it, by highlighting it through our show. So, Brother Yusuf, nice to get you back on again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam, Brother Mohammed. And again, peace be upon all the individuals out there, listeners, viewers out there. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whichever part of the world you are in. Indeed, that is the case. The reason I basically, we're doing this particular session this evening is we want to highlight, as the podcast, as the YouTube channel advertisement basically illustrates, Israelis, well, they've been doing it, but there's a particularly disturbing case where the Israeli soldiers killed or left for dead a disabled man, an individual that had Down syndrome and was totally left to die. And this was basically articulated by the mother. So this is a report. I wanted to discuss it yesterday, but unfortunately we got caught up yesterday in a number of issues with, kind of a sideshow where we had individuals coming in and wasting our time. We've got a limited segment this evening. I don't know, probably Brother Mohammed could share the StreamYard. We could take one or two questions, but we're going to limit you. And if you're going to waste our time, we're going to kick you out. But this is a fairly disturbing situation that happened about 5 or 6 days ago. So here we are. I'm going to share the screen. This is directly from the BBC. So it's not again, and we try and give you information that is even viewed as traditionally biased towards the Palestinians, because people say, well, look, the BBC or CNN, these are major news outlets, quote from there. And the only reason we quote from there, not that they are the best news outlets out there, but because of the fact that for some people, you individuals view them as authentic news outlets. So here's a report from the BBC. I'm sharing the screen here. This is from the BBC's website 6 days ago, at least actually 5 days ago. But this is from the BBC news website. And as you can clearly see here, look at the heading. Look at the heading here. It says here, Gaza man with Down syndrome attacked by the IDF dog and left to die, mother tells the BBC. This was, the content of this is particularly disturbing. But the situation is, and the Israeli military has now admitted, and there's going to be obviously no responsibility for this, that a Palestinian man with Down syndrome, and apparently he was also autistic, and trust me, these are not easy children to deal with, was attacked by an army dog in Gaza, left on his own by soldiers, after his family had been ordered to leave at gunpoint. And this chap here by the name of Mohammed Bar, this little boy here, was actually not a boy, he's a 24-year-old. But 10 years ago, he was 14. Mohammed Bar, that's his name, was found dead by his family a week later. Responding to queries from the BBC, this is the excuse that they made. The Israeli army said the troops left Mohammed Bar alone because soldiers injured in a rocket attack needed their help. Wow, how amazing. So here's a report. This is a report from the BBC that this boy was particularly bullied. There was always his family. He was bullied at school. He was beaten. And it says here, when the war started and he was terrorized by the sounds of bombs falling, someone always said things were going to be okay. Muhammad was heavy and found movement difficult. He spent his days sitting in an armchair. If he needed anything, there was a niece or a nephew to help. And he had, according to the report, Down syndrome and autism. These are very difficult. It's difficult to bring up Down syndrome children. It's difficult to bring up children with autism. His mother, who's 70 years, he's 24, the mother is 70, stated he didn't know how to eat, drink, or change his clothes. I'm the one who changed his nappies. I mean, he's 24 years old. I'm the one who fed him. He didn't know how to do anything himself. And on the 27th of June, the war, as you see here, this is a BBC report, came back to Bar's family neighborhood, and his will shrank even further. And as the residents of Shajaya, east of Gaza City, the Bars were given order to evacuate by the Israeli Defense Force. Now, how do you evacuate by a person who's heavy? How do you carry him? How do you take him? They've got no wheelchairs. So the IDF was advancing into Shajaya by claiming to pursue Hamas fighters, as they claims, but the Bars were tired of moving. And she then stated, this is a mother, that we evacuated around 15 times. 15 times, imagine, and told to go to evacuate. We would go to Jibril's place, then they would be bombing Jibril's place. We would go to Haidar Square, but then they would be bombing Haidar Square. We would go to Rimal, but then they would be bombing at Rimal. We would go to Shakwa Square, but then they would be bombing at Shakwa Square. So this rubbish about being the most moral army in the world, how ironical. I mean, it's actually the most immoral army in the world. You're telling people to move and then you bomb them. You're telling people to move and then you bomb them. Who does that? Only a sadistic, satanic, evil, repulsive, repugnant, pathetic regime that has got no morality, no scruples, and no sense of decency. Absolutely no sense of decency. So this is the family. That's the mother. The fighting intensified around them. And then comes a critical point. We were under siege for 7 days. The tanks and the soldiers were all around the house. Muhammad was staying on his sofa, and he didn't like sitting anywhere except for there. So think about it. This man has got Down syndrome, and he's autistic. And there's violent sounds, there's vibration, there's concussion, and none of this could be explained to him. And this is the other point, that what people don't seem to realize. Imagine the psychological damage it must be doing to children. To see just 24 hours bombing, killing, murder, slaughter, shooting, blood, children's heads being blown out. What about the children who are witnessing it? What about even the adults who are witnessing? What about the psychological impact that it has on them? But now amplified tenfold. What about people who already have psychological disorders? What about people who are, for example, depressed? What about people who are autistic? What about people who've got Down syndrome? What about people who've got a heart condition or angina? What about people who've got cancer or stage 4 cancer? And they're now in the midst of war. What about people who can't, for example, pass? They've got they can't even pass urine, and they need machinery to do that. Imagine the mental torture that these particular individuals would go through. And this is one example I may add amongst many, because he's not the only individual with Down syndrome. And Brother Mohammed, I want you to share the StreamYard link. So if any person comes in, we can really teach them today, because I'm not in a mood to hear garbage from any outsider. But because I think people get their appetites somehow or the other. They've got a sadistic the appetites get wet when they see that they've got the ability to get inside a program, but also at the same time it'll expose them to this content that we want them to educate. So those who are interested in coming in, well, the StreamYard link is there. We are here to educate you and teach you. You're not here to debate us. Firstly, you're not here to debate either me or Brother Mohammed. If you know the background, if you know the situation, if you've got a qualification on politics, on the situation in the Middle East, then you can possibly debate. If you come on this platform, you get taught. You come to learn. So don't come with this attitude and approach that you are here attempting to debate us, those individuals who know they are. You come here and you learn. You don't attempt to debate. Once you study enough, then you can have the ability to come on this platform and then debate. So coming back to this Brother Mohammed. For Mohammed, war meant loud, violent sounds, the air vibrating. He would panic and say, I'm scared. This is his mother saying. He would say, hey, thinking that someone wanted to hit him. So he's hearing these bombs and he thinks they are personally going to strike him. We would come around him and comfort him. He didn't understand much. His autism made it difficult. And I can tell you, autistic children are difficult, very, very difficult to deal with. On 3rd of July, here comes the IDF raided their home on Nazar Street. Nabila says, that's his mother, that there were several dozen soldiers with a combat dog, animals used to find Hamas fighters and check for booby traps and explosives. So this is what they claim. At first, you heard them breaking in and smashing everything. These are innocent people, poor people with a Down syndrome child. They're breaking everything, these sadistic thugs, and smashing everything. And then referring to Mohammed, she says, I told them, the mother is saying, he's disabled. Have mercy on him. He's disabled. Keep the dog away from him. But then what happened, the IDF, although the BBC, because you check the other reports from Haaretz, which is more honest than the BBC, they set the dog on him. The IDF soldiers set the dog on him, and Nabila saw the animal attack Mohammed. So the IDF soldiers are in, and the dog attacks him, and the soldiers are there. The dog that attacked him, look at this, biting his chest and then his hand, biting his chest and then his hand. Mohammed didn't want to speak, only muttering, no, no, no. The dog bit his arm, and the blood was shed because it affected his artery. I wanted to get to him, but I couldn't. They were prevented from getting to him. No one could get to him. And he was patting the dog's head, saying, enough, my dear, enough. In the end, he relaxed his hand. And the dog started tearing at him while he was bleeding. This is from the BBC, the biased BBC. So don't come and say we are giving you Al Jazeera content or biased Iranian content. This is from the BBC. Around this point, says Nabila, the soldiers took the young man into another room and away from the dog. How polite. They tried to treat his wounds. How polite. Couldn't you take the dog away from him to prevent him from being bitten in the very first place? A terrified Mohammed, who always depended on his family for help, was now in the care of combat soldiers who had come from streets where they'd been fighting close quarters with Hamas. According to the BBC, they've been fighting with Hamas. These are Palestinian resistance fighters that have the right to fight back. They took him away, put him in a separate room, and locked the door. This man's got Down syndrome. He's autistic. Imagine locking up. Deal with autistic children and adults. They're worse than adults. As adults, they're more difficult because they've got this now development as an adult. They more often they're not bigger in size, and their emotions, they don't know how to control their emotions. But the parents were then basically kept away, the family. And look at what the mother, they told us to be quiet and they aimed their guns at us. Look at this family. They put us in a room by ourselves and Mohammed was alone in another room. So they tied him up. They said, we will bring a military doctor to treat him, these soldiers. At one point, according to Nabila, a military doctor went into the room where Mohammed was lying. Mohammed's niece, Jana Bar, she's 11 years old. She's an 11-year-old girl, described how the family pleaded with soldiers to help him. We told them Mohammed was not well, but they kept saying he was fine. Imagine these scumbags, thugs. After several hours, not clear, the family was ordered at gunpoint to leave, leaving Mohammed behind with the soldiers. There were pleas and cries. 2 of his brothers were arrested by the army. They still have not been released. The rest of his family found shelter in a bombed-out building. They return a week later to a sight that haunts Muhammad's brother Jibril. He produces his mobile phone and shows a cameraman view. Muhammad's body is lying on the floor. There is blood around him and a tourniquet on his arm, like a kind of a belt. Like a belt, just a belt. This was most probably used to stop heavy bleeding from his upper arm. Jibril points to a gaze used to bandage a wound and remarks on the blood that clotted after the tourniquet was applied. They tried to stop the bleeding. Then they left him without stitches or care. So just think about it. When you are bleeding, I mean, in a sports injury, you try and stop the bleeding. What's the next step? You can't just keep a belt or a tied. I've bled. You can't just simply keep a tied rope or a cloth around you. You need stitches. You need immediate care. Just the basic first aid measures. but they were not there. Of course, as you can see, this is a mother speaking. Muhammad was dead for a period of time because he was already abandoned. We thought he wasn't at home, but it turned out he had been bleeding and left alone at home all this time. Of course, the army left him. It's not clear what exact injury caused Muhammad's death, nor what happened to him in the time his family last saw him. He was buried shortly after the family found him. And you know where they buried him? They buried him in an alley between houses because it was too dangerous to take the corpse to the mortuary or a graveyard. There was no post-mortem and no certificate of death, meaning he's Down syndrome, he's got autism, he's nothing, he's not important. He's not important. The family is demanding an investigation. Will there be an investigation? They don't even investigate themselves when they kill their own civilians, when they kill their own hostages, the Israeli hostages that came naked to them pleading for mercy. What did they do? They shot them dead. When the World Central Kitchen, whites, Europeans were going and they bombed the convoy every 20 minutes, one after the other. They said, no, it was just a legitimate mistake, even though the coordinates, you think they're going to investigate this? Liars. But with fighting and so many dead, it's hard to be hopeful that will happen anytime soon. It will never happen. The Israeli military confirmed it. This is what they're saying, that the army dog attacked Bar. How do you let the army dog? Aren't you controlling the army dog? What are you doing there? If you can't control your own army dog, meaning you're out of control yourself. If you're out of control, how are you going to control your animal? If you're a psychopath, how are you going to control another animal? And that after giving him initial medical treatment, the soldiers left him on his own. Now, think about this. During the search of the building, the dog-bitten individual, this is what they report, he was given treatment and the family was urged to evacuate the apartment to avoid staying in the combat area. But what about him? The family offered to take him away. This is their son. This is the mother. They're not terrorists. The boy's not a threat. He can't feed himself. He can't go to the toilet. He can't urinate. He's stuck to a chair. They need to carry him. He's autistic. He's Down syndrome. He can't even feed himself. And you leave him there for the week? The army said the troop then left Mr. Barr alone because soldiers, some scumbag soldiers injured in an RPG elsewhere needed help. Wow. One of the soldiers died. Good. Maybe they deserve it. This is the point. Saying the IDF regrets any harm to civilians during combat. I mean, I don't want to swear, but how effing considerate is that? You have some regret. How shame. This is bad. We're sorry about this. Is that what it is? And the statement accused Hamas of using civilians as human shields. But who kept the boy here? Was the boy kept as a human shield here? Because the statement, as the BBC report, does not address his condition when the soldiers left him. Firstly, he needed stitches because he was bleeding. And secondly, you just put a tourniquet around him and left him for dead. He can't feed himself. He can't go to the toilet. He can't bath himself. He can't walk. What are you talking about? Nabila is left with an image of a dead child. I constantly see the dog tearing at him and his hand and the blood pouring from his hand. And these are the after images. These are the after images. The story was updated with an IDF response. Here's the images that they came home. This was a chair. This is his chair. These are the stains of blood. They don't show the body. This is the boy here. He can't even drink. He can't even hold a cup. That's a mother. This is him. He sits there. This is a chair that he sits on. And they found him dead. Go to a report by the Turkish newspaper. The Gazan man with Down syndrome mauled by an Israeli army. You go into this particular report. It goes into detail. He was sitting on a couch. The mother screamed for the soldiers to stop the dog attacking her son. So I don't understand this. The dog attacks the boy. He attacks him because he's a boy. He can't do anything for himself. And the soldiers allow it. We appealed to the Israeli soldiers to help him, but they asked us to stay away and wait for the army's doctor to arrive. Muhammad needed help after the dog killed him. Muhammad was left bleeding inside the room. After a few moments, silence prevailed. At this moment, we came to know that my son has died. So he was left bleeding to death outside his room. Is this merciful killing? Merciless killing. The Israeli soldiers left him bleeding inside the room until he died of thirst, and his brothers have now been kidnapped by the Israeli forces, military, and they are being kept in torture dungeons. Last May, it's not the first time, the report goes, an Israeli dog brutally attacked a 70-year-old Palestinian woman during a military operation in Jabalia in the northern Gaza camp. And the Israeli army systematically uses these dogs in its raids. And they flouted UN Security Councils calling for resolutions. This is a situation. This is a situation that you've basically got in relation to what is essentially transpiring. This is the situation. This is the boy. This is the image. I think this is the short by the end of this is the picture. I don't know if you can share this. Here we are.
I need to remove the other one. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah. Let me stop sharing and let me try and get this here. I'll try and stop this. Let me just share the screen so that
I can see you, Hassan. Thank you, brother. I'll bring you on soon. We got brother Hassan Abdi. He wants to talk about young people with disabilities and.
Yeah, sure.
So we'll get him on soon, inshallah.
We'll get him on shortly. I just want to show this clip and then we can get him on. Now we clear. Can you see this? I've just shared a screen. Can you see this now?
It's not
hold
there
on.
yet.
Let me just get this here. I'm just going to go to my StreamYard studio and I'll share this and try and get this. Let me get this here. Here we are. Okay, now you could share.
Yeah.
Can you see that now? Now it's available. Let's try and explore this. This is a short. This is the guy. This is the boy. A week later.
هو ينامش بيلعبوا بعدين صار يقول للقلب خلاص يا حبيبي خلاص.
They pleaded with the soldiers.
ارفعوا الرايات البيضاء ويلا اطلعوا. طلبت امي من الجندي انها تاخذ محمد.
They refused to let the child go. These are combat dogs, vicious. And they've got what they call a lockjaw syndrome. This is the mother.
لما مسك ايده الكلب صار يشد في كتفه يشد في كتفه والدم يسيل يقول له خلاص يا حبيبي يحسس على راس الكلب.
محمد لا بده يشرب ميه بده حد يشربه زي ما انت شايف. ولاد اخوه الصغار هم اللي بيشربوه بيساعدوا ستهم. هذه الكنبايه اللي كان قاعد عليها محمد لا ماجم عليه الكلب. هاي دمه هاي الغرفه اللي حضر فيها.
محمد هو متلازم بالضبط وتوحد بصعوبة بيمشي وهو من النوع العنيد. بأخده كنت بصعوبة على الحمام لما يقوم يتجاوب معنا وأنا اللي بطعميه وأنا اللي بشربه وأنا اللي بغير له بحط بامبرز. بعرفش ولا إشي في الدنيا غير كلمة مية ولما يجوع على الأخير بقول آكل. تحصرنا 7 أيام وكان محمد معانا 7 يوم سمعناهم وهم إيش ورا الدار كلهم نزلوا ورا الدار يفتشوا ويرطنوا وهذا قلنا خلاص فيش مجال بدهم يفجروا الدار فينا. بعدين بعد بشوية اللي هم مطلعين لنا كلبين ومحمد بحكيش محمد لكن هو خوف صار يقول ولا ويوخر لورا. الكلب صار يحوم حوالين الدار ويرجع ينهش في محمد ينهش بصدره ينهش بإيده. عود رخاله إيده هيك والكلب مسكها وصار ياكل فيها وانا اقول يا خدي الحقوني الكلب اكلها اكل ايده.
الساعة 6 المغرب طلعونا وحكوا لنا ارفعوا الرايات البيضاء ويلا اطلعوا. طلبت امي من الجندي انها تاخذ محمد حكى لها لا ممنوع ما بينفعش.
رن علي ابن عمي وحكى لي انه وصل الشجاعية ودخل البيت ولقى محمد مستشهد في الغرفة. حكيت له انا هيني جاي في الطريق عليك طبعا كانت الروحة هناك مغامرة خاطرة، لأن لسه الجيش الإسرائيلي مش معلن عملية الانسحاب أو انتهاء العملية. هاي الدم وسوائل طالعة من جسمه طبعا. هذا لما كان عند راسه كان الخزانة متحركة من مكانه والتخت متحرك من مكانه. هاي هنا لما رحنا نكشف عليه جنب البيت.
These are blotted out images.
هذه جثته.
Subhanallah.
التحلل.
Beginning to
طفل معاق
decompose. He had maggots.
لا بيعرف حاجة في الدنيا. أنا اللي بطعميه وأنا بشربه، كيف لما أفقده هيك مرة واحدة مش عامل ولا حاجة في الدنيا هيك دي موتوه. حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل فيهم.
So I
Wow,
have
that's
some shame.
very, very powerful. That's very powerful, Brother Yusuf. Subhanallah. Is it okay to get Brother Hassan on? Is that okay?
Yes, indeed. I'm sorry if you're emotional on that, but I mean, it just makes me angry to see this filled with emotions. Terrible. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Hassan.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Right. With regards to the discussion at hand, I just thought I'd add a few points here. You spoke about children with autism and Down syndrome and how difficult it can be to deal with them. What a lot of people perhaps don't understand is that children with Down syndrome or autism, specifically Down syndrome, they don't just have to be nurtured in a specific way, but also with regards to their mannerisms. They don't comprehend things the way normal people do. There's a specific way of interacting with them. As an example, one of my distant relatives, they have a son who has Down syndrome. And whenever someone has to give him something to eat, like in Urdu, we say "beta khana kha lo." So we can't say that. We have to say "bacha khaya khaya." He only. That's the only thing that he sort of understands. I mean, this is a very small example I'm giving, but just to show that children or even people, adults with any form of autism, they don't comprehend things the same way, and when they try to communicate, their ways of communication aren't how normal people would communicate, and the way they feel pain, of course, would then most likely be different. Now, what the video being shown and how the dog basically attacked the departed brother, it was very difficult for me to see, because I've seen that because I have a young boy like that in my family, in my distant family, and it just reminded me of my nephew. Just looking at that, I honestly, I'm trying to compose myself here, because it's very difficult for, I would say it's very difficult for any human being to imagine, a very innocent person being mauled like that, because this was a mauling. You can put any spin of words on it. This was a barbaric mauling. There's no other way to describe this, the way I see it.
So just to understand,
go ahead, Brother Mohammed.
No, just to understand, Brother Hassan, subhanAllah, you mentioned you got some close relatives with this type of illness, and how difficult, you mentioned, it is to communicate, like to give simple orders. It could be very frustrating, and somebody who has this type of illness, for him or her to comprehend the message that you're giving. So imagine the situation that this young boy was in when he had these thugs, these shayateen come into the house.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the brother would have realized what was happening. In fact, it would not be it would not be outside the realms of possibilities to consider that up until he passed, he would not have realized that, that all of this was happening. Most likely he would not have been able to comprehend it, because not only do I have my distant nephew as an example. My late mother was a therapist, a psychologist, and well, she taught her children a thing or two, which is why I'm somewhat versed in the subject. You'd have to ask an actual expert. From what little I know, I can at least say that this was a very cruel act to be done to someone who is, for the lack of a better term, mentally impaired. That's not the best term to use, but it's what some people may understand at this point.
That Down syndrome is one aspect, but when it's combined with autism, because a wife's family's got autistic children, and as they grow up, they're not the easiest to deal with. So one could basically have a combination of a child who's got Down syndrome and is autistic at the same time, has been medically diagnosed as such. In an ordinary situation, they're not the easiest of children to deal with, and I mean, there's so many emotional elements surrounding that. One could well imagine that when real time trauma is inflicted on them, their response is probably amplified tenfold, because he was not just attacked by the dog or mauled, but he was left to bleed to death and left there in that condition for about a week. Because the parents and the children were kicked out by the Israelis at gunpoint. So clearly you could see without feeding himself, he can't feed himself, he can't go to the toilet, he can't go and urinate, plus he's bleeding, plus he's in pain, plus he's got the mental agony and the fact that he's mentally disabled, amplified on a number of levels. So one could very well imagine that this is not just cruel, but I mean, it's inherently evil. It is inherently satanic. And for me, this incident itself, at the very core, and there must be hundreds, if not thousands, of similar incidents which we don't see, is simply symptomatic of what the IDF and what the Israeli regime, in fact, stands for, which means that now the only moral thing we can do and call for is for the total and utter disbandment of the state of Israel. Israel as a regime should no longer exist. It cannot exist. Anyone who wants to make excuses or is afraid to say that publicly, does Israel have the right to exist? It has lost its right to exist. It should not exist. The entire administration should be put away. The entire system should not exist. There should not be a nation state called the State of Israel. And I say this boldly and candidly without any fear or favor. That's what I'm saying, is what I saw there, and that powerful image that is quite emotional to a lot of us, is symptomatic of the problem of this war for the past 9 months, whilst the entire world sits back and just let imperialism essentially takes hold and destroy an entire population. And these are poor people. Besides that, these were poor people. I mean, you could see the background, poverty-stricken. And the whole, this kicks out the entire argument about the human shields debate in the first place. This nonsense, pure nonsense of human shields. We could clearly see, and this has been going on for days and months and years and decades. Brother Mohammed.
True, that I couldn't agree more. And just to add on to this, as you said, that this is one case that's come out to the forefront to the public. I mean, Allahu Alam, how many children, have been subject to this sort of barbarity and this sort of inhumane treatment. I mean, it wasn't bad enough that Ben Gvir called an entire nation subhuman. They've proven that they treat them as such. I mean, at this point, if anyone has the temerity to defend that nation, I would seriously ask them to get their head checked, go to a psychiatrist, because I can't see any more way of defending this.
The danger that I see is that, you know, there's so much of these incidents that are happening that we even forget it. I mean, I'll give you a classic example here, Brother Mohammed. I want to share something for you. Speaking about disabled, and again, this is I try and share as much as possible from these Western media. So if Zionists and propagandists see this, they can see that this is not from Muslim sources. Here's one example. This is not now. This is in December. You can share this, Brother Mohammed, if you got it there. Yeah, this year was on the 6th of December. How many of us remember this? You know, I remember this. I forgot about this. This is the kind of atrocities that you've seen. You forget the atrocities that are committed. This is on the 6th of December last year. The video shows Israeli soldiers shooting a mentally disabled Palestinian in the West Bank. This is on CNN. And here we are. I think this is the video, if I'm not mistaken, if it basically...
Israel Defense Forces confirm its soldiers confronted a mentally disabled Palestinian man who was shot by a man in military fatigues in Kalkas, near the West Bank city of Hebron. It says it is launching an investigation. 34-year-old Tariq Abu Abid was on his way home when 3 Israeli soldiers stopped him and asked for identification. This according to his brother, Dia Abu Abid. Dia says that an argument ensued after Tariq told the soldiers he did not have identification. The other civilian involved in the confrontation was identified by Dia as Tariq's friend, who he said was trying to explain to the soldiers that Tariq has special needs. According to Dia, Tariq is, quote, known amongst the community for his mental disabilities. The soldiers refused to listen, end quote. Dia was transported from Kalkas to a hospital and suffered heavy bleeding before undergoing surgery on his leg. Since Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel, tensions have spilled over into the West Bank and East Jerusalem that have left at least 256 Palestinians killed by Israeli troops or Israeli settlers, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health.
So that's in December. That's in December, and you could see the shooting dead, the killing of Ayad Halak. That's a Palestinian. They basically stated again, his brain works like a child. He can't talk. They were trying to explain this person's mentally disabled. He did not have an argumentation, and then they shot him dead. And you see the shooting. So the Palestinians shot, killed, murdered, and then they said they're going to investigate. The story has been updated to clarify the IDS statement of the role. So they're going to investigate this. What's the investigation? Nothing. They won't investigate this. So the danger is that there's so many of these incidents that are happening daily, that we are losing count. I mean, we are forgetting what is happening by the day because there's so many. I mean, if there's, for example, one massacre that takes place and you know about it, but there's so many massacres, so many killings, so many shootings, I mean, that you forget, like Hind Rajab. I mean, you ask people, almost forget, I forgot about it. You know, Hind Rajab, the girl that was shot dead in the car, about close to, I think, 100 bullets, killed whilst the ambulances were trying to get her, shot dead in cold blood by the Israelis. So this is what you're dealing with. It's a sick, satanic, evil, sadistic, brutal, barbaric, repugnant regime that should just simply cease to exist. We need to call now for it. No longer a two-state solution, no longer even one-state solution. You need to call for the total disbandment of the state of Israel. The state of Israel should cease to exist completely and utterly. There's no, and I make no qualms about that, no shame. This is the boy. This is what we're dealing with.
This is something else. Just recently,
this is something else. This is Nusayrat. You see, as we talk, Brother Mohammed, there's so many killings that have been taking place. There's an attack on the Nusayrat camp. I think we mentioned this on Saturday. Killed 17, wounded about 80. I think sometime last week. If you check the date, 15th of July, it was last week. They've attacked 5 separate schools in Gaza, killing dozens of people sheltering in them, according to the Palestinian officials, medics, and rescuers. And they're striking UN-run Abu Huraydaban school in the Nusayrat camp. These are United Nations run. What are they saying? Are these Hamas schools? 17 people, injuring 80. Most of the victims are women and children again. Most of them are women and children. So what is this? The shame. It's a week of massacres. Disgraceful to the worst. Do we have anyone else on the stream? because I'm just simply fed up and angered when I see this and hear about this. Some people react emotionally. I get angered when I hear this kind of and see this kind of evil before my eyes.
I have put the link out after yesterday with that clown who came on and used some foul language. I can't see him coming back, and I don't think I should let him come back if he does.
I don't think he's.
He used some very foul, and of course,
foul language is unacceptable. We want to maintain standards.
But the platform is open. The link has been posted and also has been pinned. So, brothers and sisters, do your part. What I mean by doing your part is sharing the show, sharing the stream. We need to get this message out. Let we can't just let this go past. We can't just ignore it. And I know our hands are tied. We are restricted in what we can do. But by subscribing, liking, and sharing the stream, this is helping to get the message out. And this is my sincere request to the brothers and sisters, is to share the stream to your friends and family, your Facebook, on Twitter or X, whatever it's called, or Instagram, whatever social media platforms that you have. Please share the stream. Hassan, I really appreciate you joining us, and inshallah we'll see if anybody else wants to join. Any final words you want to say, Brother Hassan?
Yes, I would like to say that I honestly, the final word I would just like to say is just to everyone listening, whether or not, whatever your political stance may be, just remember that these are human beings being treated worse than animals. I mean, we as Muslims would not even treat animals the way they just treated a human being. Just keep that in mind. That's all I've got to say. That's all I've got to say.
Yeah, Brother Mohammed, I don't know. I mean, I'll share one last link with you. Thank you, Brother Hassan, for coming on and sharing your thoughts and your views on us. It's been
he's quite emotional himself.
Yes.
I think Brother Hassan was struggling.
It's a heart-wrenching program this evening, but I thought that it's important. We won't go too long, but just to give you an example that nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. This is a clip from the Times of Israel. If you could share this. This is recently dated the 29th of March. This is a petition by the parents of an autistic Palestinian shot dead by border cop. Because what happened is that in 2020, the Iyad Halak was autistic, and he was shot dead by an Israeli trooper, shot dead in cold blood. And then the High Court, the Supreme Court, made the courts in Israel made a ruling that, look, he was exonerated, and what he did was what they described as an honest mistake. What's an honest mistake? What do you mean an honest mistake? When you shoot dead someone who's autistic in cold blood, how is that an honest mistake? How is that an honest mistake? I mean, not even culpable homicide. So the High Court in March heard a petition from the parents in East Jerusalem, and they were calling the High Court to overturn the decision to clear the officer. So they cleared the officer of wrongdoing. They never even convicted him of what we would call culpable homicide. He had autistic spectrum, fatally shot by border police after being mistaken for being an armed terrorist whilst on his way to a special education school. How do you mistake someone as an armed terrorist? Explain that to me. And then the response is the petition faces slim odds, as a High Court rarely interferes with state attorney decisions, especially when asked to appeal a judicial ruling. This is the boy there. This is his picture. The Halak family filed a petition a few months ago, before the attack on October 7th. We must not see that as an attack any longer. See that as resistance. Today we were in front of the court and we explained to the court how much of their decision not to appeal on this verdict is wrong. The policeman was charged with reckless manslaughter. He claimed to have mistaken Halak for an armed terrorist and the phone in his hand for a gun. How do you make such a mistake? Halak was confused. They shot him dead. So they now appealing to the High Court to petition. And it's quite clear that by the looks of it, nothing will happen. And he was acquitted. He wasn't even convicted of culpable homicide. He was totally acquitted. So this goes to show that nothing will happen. Less likely, this was in East Jerusalem, meaning an Israeli Arab who've got slightly more rights than the Palestinians. But imagine a Palestinian in Gaza, this little poor boy in a war-torn zone. There'll be no inquiry. There'll be nothing. And so it's important that we bring this to the attention of the people out there. And those Muslims in the chat, those Christians in the chat, atheists in the chat who recognize the Palestinian cause, share the stream with others, because very few people are talking about this. We've got a few good channels out there. There's a couple of good channels on YouTube. Novara Media as one example. Owen Jones, he's a fantastic journalist that's doing excellent work. And of course, Brother Mohammed's channel, the Coventry Faith Foundation, that has allowed these programs to go on for the past couple of months. We need to talk, we need to discuss, we need to share this, and share the stream. Subscribe to both his channels. Subscribe to the South African Debate Initiative, which is a fledgling YouTube channel in South Africa, and share the stream on WhatsApp. Share it on your podcast. Share it with your friends on your other social media outlets. Share it amongst your neighbors. Educate them. Show them what the Israelis are basically doing. Let the world see how evil the situation is, and then the world can turn against them in the same way they turned against the Nazis. Nobody sees Nazis as good people. Nobody sees the Germans in the Second World War as good people any longer. Well, history is changing. History is shifting. Let the world see evil for what it is and expose the evil for what it is. And we, again, continue to make and pray for the Palestinian resistance. We pray that Allah protects and showers his mercy on the Palestinian people, and of course allow us and increase our voices to speak for and on their behalf, and for and on behalf of oppressed people everywhere. So this was a tough episode and a heart-wrenching one, and I leave it at that, Brother Mohammed.
No, that's beautiful. It's a nice way to end. I really want to leave his image on the screen while we leave the platform, and then I'll close the show, because these stories must be told. And if myself and Brother Yusuf continue to expose the horrors of the invasion or the conflict in Gaza, we need to continue to give out the message to everybody that we are continuing to help and support our brothers and sisters in Palestine. And by doing these shows, it's a small part on our behalf, inshallah. But Brother Yusuf, now jazakallah khair, and inshallah see you soon. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to leave this